we are back now for part 3 in this How I Became a 5-Time World Champion series with the one and only Viswanathan Anand, 14th World Chess Champion. Now, Vishy, I don't know if you knew this, but did you know that you are the only person to play a World Championship match against both Kasparov and Karpov?
I knew that I had a big rivalry against both of them. I didn't realize that I was the only one because Korchnoi would come in and Short would come in, but of course they played a candidates match against one of them and a World Championship against the other. And in my case, I actually played World Championship. So yes, technically, I'm the only one. Well, at least I hope I'm not missing someone, but I can't think of anyone.
Not that you need necessarily more accolades or feathers in your cap, if you will, but in preparing this whole series, and obviously we're going to have a lot of fun bringing it to the community, we're learning facts about you that surprise us every step of the way. So we're going to dive into this game from the 1998 FIDE World Championship match now versus Anatoly Karpov. Of course, at this time there was still some of the PCA, FIDE, all that stuff, and we're not going to get into the politics of that, but I would like you to maybe set the tone for this game, Vishy, given that you are the only one to ever play a World Championship match against those two legends, to talk a little bit about the contrasting styles of Kasparov and Karpov, right? Just two incredible greats. Everyone knows the heavyweight battles they had in their career. You've now had a World Championship match against Kasparov under your belt, right? That was in our previous video. If anyone's tuning in and hasn't watched that, they should do that. Now you're preparing for a match against Karpov. Talk a little bit about what went into that, what the different styles and strengths and weaknesses were of these guys, and how you took that into your preparation.
Okay, so I've started off with Karpov. I played him first in the candidates match 7 years before the game you're about to show. And I was a young player. I mean, it was my first cycle. I had just broken in and I was going to play Karpov. And there's a story which I think is broadly true, that when Karpov went for the drawing of lots, he tried to insist that instead of a drawing of lots, that 1 should be paired with 8 and 2 should be paired with 7, because that way he would get me. I was the lowest rated participant. And when Campomanes agreed to this, legend is that Karpov had a big grin on his face, really happy that he'd gotten the fish. So, and I'm going to segue into this because, of course, I was playing a legend, and Mikhail Gurevich was my trainer for this match. I got him especially because I wanted his perspective and his insight into how to approach Karpov. He gave me a couple of interesting insights. One was simply that Karpov often seemed pretty planless, but he said he's one of the best at sensing what you're going to do, and he'll somehow stop it. So prophylactic chess. And he said Karpov is incredibly good at this. If you're not used to his way of thinking, you'll miss this and get into trouble a lot. It's quite frustrating when you're sitting at the board and somebody's just frustrating your plan.
Right.
Interesting insight. I had not really thought about chess in that kind of way. My chess was very direct and straightforward at that point. The other thing I would say about Karpov is, and this is why I brought up the story about how in effect he was underestimating me. It was very easy to underestimate him. You often played him and he would get into trouble quite easily. His understanding everything is phenomenal, but he could also get into trouble a lot. And so very often in a game, you'd get to the position where you think, oh, I played him so easily. And I learned in the long term that it's a very bad mistake to underestimate the guy. He's one of the most difficult people to put away. Again, you kind of have to go back to that time and see the games with maybe that perspective, but he really was a very difficult guy to put away. In my first match against him, I had 5 winning positions and I only managed to win 1.
Wow.
And that's why I lost the match, despite more or less in a sense dominating it. And I think Korchnoi, Kasparov, all of them at some point made this mistake with Karpov. Karpov's level could drop a bit, they would underestimate him, and then boom, he would come back. I think there are a couple of times where Kasparov also tried to blow him away because he thought, this is my chance, this guy is shaking.
Right.
And he would do this. Obviously, if you take the whole package, he is it. He's incredibly good understanding. He could analyze well. He could play very long games. Everything that from in the pre-computer era was considered a strength, he had it in spades. And but everyone said about him, Korchnoi, Kasparov, and I can confirm this to some degree, that he was quite lazy. His talent allowed him to get everything so easily that he didn't push himself quite as hard. but just a genius. I still, even with that, I would say that he has a remarkable career, of course.
Yeah.
So with Karpov, quite often, even from the very beginning, I would outplay him, and I felt that he was very human, that I could play against him. Kasparov, on the other hand, really had this legendary opening preparation.
Right.
And it was uncanny. And over the years, I've come to respect it more, even though I understand it better and see more sides of it. I respect it more every time. He had the ability to sense where you were going, because he was not only did he know what he needed to play, he was well informed about everything that seemed to go on. And he had thoughts and opinions about every position. So even though he's often typecast as a kind of narrow player, he could do end games very well. He could do, I mean, he's a real student of the game in the Botvinnik way. And especially he knew how to use psychology on his opponents. So Kasparov, it was much harder to outplay, unsurprisingly. And you had to take quite a lot of risk before you got a position where you might outplay him. Right. But it was he had that kind of repertoire where you might have your chances with him, but you were in. You had to raise the stakes a lot and get in. Kasparov was also simply 12 years younger, and I don't know whether Karpov was stronger before or after. I think he actually became a stronger player when he was playing Kasparov.
Yeah.
Kasparov forced him to become stronger, but of course Kasparov himself was stronger at that point. So, but both very, very different people. Karpov is the man you never know what he's thinking. He could be friendly with you and backstab you the same day. Or he could have backstabbed you in the morning and he'd be friendly and charming in the evening. Kasparov, what is it? We are WIYS. What you see is what you get.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He's the package. I mean, if he disliked you in the morning, he would sulk all evening. He could not talk to someone for weeks, but he could be friendly as well. So he's, I think, much more straightforward in general.
It's funny just the way you described him, and obviously I know I'm oversimplifying or over-summarizing, but very much opposites in many ways, right? And I think it's one of the reasons people loved to see their clashes and battles. And so, well, okay, so I'll let you expand a little bit about the preparation, because I want to start with the fact that this is the first game you had against Karpov in this World Championship in 1998, and you chose to play the Trompowsky. And so, to kind of tie a bow on, now that you've kind of described Kasparov and Karpov, because you played Kasparov in 95, knowing the different style, is there a reason you chose such an opening like this? And what was your overall approach in your thinking, hey, this is how I'm going to beat and outplay Karpov in this match? And what did I learn from the match with Kasparov?
Okay, there are a couple of things I want to clarify with you. This was the sixth game of the match.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I said first game of our. Go ahead. Yes, first game of the video from this match that we're doing. But yeah.
Okay. And by the way, the second thing was you called me 14th world champion. I think I'm actually 15th.
After Kramnik, yeah. I guess I need.
Well, actually, the funny thing is I'm 15th in both, because when Kasparov left FIDE, Karpov became world champion again, but he became the 12th world champion again. And then you had
the unification.
Halifman.
If we count the knockout, you had Halifman.
Anyway, I remember at some point people were calling me 15th in both cycles, which was very funny. But anyway.
You had Topalov as well, if you're...
No, Topalov came in later.
Yeah.
He was in 2005, so he was 16th if you want the FIDE line. But anyway, so we can figure that out later.
Anyone
No, that's fine.
So getting back to this match, the sixth game of your World Championship battle versus Anatoly Karpov, you played the Trompowsky. Summarize a little bit your thoughts for everybody on why you chose this opening against Karpov. And again, at this point, you played a full match against Kasparov. You're several games into the match versus Karpov. What have you learned at this point about how to approach World Championship matches?
So this was just I was in the exact same position that Kasparov was in Seville, which is I was in a must-win situation. I was 1 point behind, having lost the fourth game with White. I mean, there's a lot of story between Groningen and Lausanne, which we can get to later. The basic thing was I was down a point, and I needed to win. So I immediately thought about Kasparov's experience in Seville. So the story is quite famous. I'll repeat it anyway because it's quite a nice story. He lost the 23rd game, blundered into something he knew, but he simply forgot and mixed up his lines, and he blundered into it. Lost that game, came back simply white in the face, and it was catastrophic. And his seconds told him that they could play Belot together. So they started playing a card game essentially till 5 in the morning, and then he went to sleep at 5. Woke up the next day there was a break between the 23rd and 24th games. He woke up the next day around midday, or maybe even later, and slowly staggered out of bed and came up with this strategy for the 24th game. I didn't have the card game or the rest day, but the strategy was the same. That having tried to win forced lines, trying to win by preparation, and not succeeded, in Kasparov's case, in mine again, I didn't want to put everything, I didn't want to put the focus on Karpov having to find one or two accurate moves or remember one or two accurate moves and then his problems are over. I wanted to keep the game in play without giving him a chance to simplify. He should never be lost. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but he should never not have a chance to go slightly wrong. And that was the only hope. So I just wanted to keep the ball in play, so to speak. And pretty much inspired by Kasparov's strategy. The idea was that Karpov, because he's someone who tries to play quite accurately at the board, he can sit there and obsess about minuscule advantages. And in fact, that's the reason he used to get into time pressure. He would sit there and try to over finesse everything. So if you give him a position where he can keep doing that, he spends a lot of time. And I did not want to face him with a theoretical battle where he just has to play one good move and the game is over. So keep the thing. And that's the idea. The Trompovsky, my attitude was, I've lost the match. I'm going to have a little bit of fun. And if it works, it works. And that's how we got here.
That's a great story, smart approach. And you didn't know what impact you'd be having. A funny story I just have to add, because I was really had only been following chess as a, 12-year-old at this time, 13-year-old. Following high-level chess was just becoming another thing. And I was looking for an opening to hang my hat on, and I was following this match closely, rooting for you. I think I described you at the time as my favorite player, partly because my repertoire was like trying to match you in many ways, and like playing the Nimzo and different things. And when you played the Trompovsky and won this game, I decided the Trompovsky is the new best opening in the world of every universe ever. And so I started playing the Trompovsky, setting myself down a path of probably 3 to 4 years of a dubious opening as white. Only to crawl myself back to the English attack where I initially was, playing e4 as you did. So you really did me a great service by winning this game. I'm kidding, obviously, but I literally chose to play the Trompovsky because of this win. So, and it's still a weapon I play from time to time. But if you look up my games in the database, again, I can't even say things like that in front of someone like you, but if you look at my, couple hundred games in ChessBase for the early parts of my career, becoming like, mid 2400 player, I was playing a lot of Trompovsky, and it was because of this game right here. This was it.
Great. The thing is, the Trompovsky was considered something that could fizzle out fast if your opponent knew what to do. But quite a lot of people really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And second, anything can fizzle out. So it's all about sensing. And if you play it creatively enough, you can do something quite original. So quite a lot of people come here.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I think it's a decent choice for this game.
Yeah, it definitely was. Obviously, it worked out. Spoiler alert. At the time, this was pretty much kind of the main line, or one of the most popular ways that Black was playing it, especially if they weren't going to go for the knight e4 stuff, which I would guess you kind of thought Karpov doesn't want to play that stuff. So did you expect something like e6 versus the sharp knight e4 lines, or how did you think he would handle it?
Absolutely. We spent a little time on knight e4 just so I wouldn't be helpless, but right. I knew there's no way Karpov was doing that. He would not have expected my Trompovsky. Therefore, he would not have checked his lines, and at the board he would back down. I was 100% sure. So I didn't even spend my time checking it.
Yeah. So it's exactly what I would think too. That you would be ready, but he wouldn't go for it anyway. So you would be much more prepared for this main line with knight c3, and then we have d6. So this variation, obviously, this is kind of how White was playing it at the time, and Black's approach with g5 is designed to stop the move pawn f4 that's coming for White. But I don't need to tell you any of this. Tell me what were your this was all kind of according to plan still at this point.
Yes, in fact, my next move is still home preparation.
Okay.
Not home preparation in the sense that we worked it out to an advantage. It's just Yusupov said, look, why don't you just make a move like bishop c4? That way, when your knight gets to e2, it's not blocking the bishop. So very, very deep prep. And knight g2, and it had exactly the effect on Karpov that I hoped it would have. He started thinking a lot. He tried to play more accurately than was necessary. And that's the problem when you're sitting on a 1-point lead. You just need a draw for the match. You want to play 130% with precision, but it doesn't exist. You've got to play like a normal game.
Right.
And looking back, I think this was just the ideal strategy for this game, and it was working. But bishop c4, I don't think is a particularly good move. It's just it gets him thinking, and that's fine.
Any more necessarily, but yeah, at the time, and it does look according to plan because everything about White's setup seems cohesive. You're going to be able to get f4 anyway. And I remember, like, this is a game I know very well because it became a STEM game. Remember when we used to tell youngsters you have to develop your repertoire on STEM games that you can build on? This was my STEM game. Bishop G7, Rook D1, and then after Castle Short. How are you feeling, and still in preparation overall?
No, I think my preparation finished with Rook D1, and just the guys wished me luck and said, "Go and play this." That's it. So. I think instead of Rook D1, you could consider Knight B5. Very similar to the game, but then I'll play C3 and come back. So if you just put Knight B5,
yeah,
Queen E7, let's say, because you don't really want to play King D8, and then I go C3, and then the Knight comes via A3 to C2 to maybe E3. This sort of thing could have been done, but I went Rook D1. And then I do it a move later, actually.
Well, I can't play Bishop D7 here, so you would have definitely induced A6, right? That would have been an interesting way.
Correct. And then I go Knight A3 and
yeah. Okay, cool. So you played Rook D1, but at this point, this was the end of your prep. They said, "Go get him, big fella. You can do this." And
basically, that's what it was. Castles. I knew that I had to play a game against a man who was desperate for the match to be over, so that he could clinch his title. He wanted a draw at any price, and so you take this unusual position and force him to keep playing. That itself was more or less what I was hoping for. I mean, you can make a joke that. He had spent a week out of the swimming pool already, so he must have been exhausted and waiting to finish the match. Basically, because while I was trying to qualify in Lausanne, he was in a swimming pool somewhere waiting to know the name of his opponent. But
right.
Little joke.
It's tiring. It's tiring to sit out by a pool. You gotta be careful with that. Use sunblock. Yeah. Anyway, so okay, a great point. I mean, you're dealing with desperation here to not to win, but to keep the position tame, and you were not going to allow it. He castled long. At this point, I think it's kind of instructive for the fans, but I don't really know that Black has a choice but to castle long, because White's plan of F4 is so clear here. Castling short is probably out of the frying pan into the fire. But any thoughts on how Karpov could have played this position better?
He could have played H5 and G4 before castling. That's one possibility. Okay. But it's hard to see that White is going to be able to push his pawns on the queen side very fast. So castling long seems quite okay.
Right.
But the other alternate would be H5, G4, and poke with the bishop on H6 and see what happens.
Right. Okay. And this is a typical kind of way that Black has evolved some of the modern stuff they do in this position. Not that this is the most popular line anymore for Black anyway. But all right. So castles long, and then Knight B5. And you gave this move an exclamation point in your book. You want to talk about not just the concrete reasons, but the practical reasons you like this move?
To be honest, looking back, I would say I should have played it instead of Rook D1, because at least it gets, I gain a tempo attacking C7. Here, what I pointed out earlier, here I'm attacking a pawn which is defended, so I'm going to go back to A3 and think on my own dime, whereas in the other one, at least he would have had to move his queen back or something.
Right.
I was in love with the result, and I might have given myself too much credit in this game. But, I beat one of the legends of chess history, so you can't argue with that.
No, not judging.
I don't know how good it is, though.
Yeah. Well, obviously, and I agree. And I think one of the ideal things about the knight, if it had come to b5 earlier, is even if Black does play a6, eventually, if they castle long, every pawn they've moved is a target for you to sort of pry open when you do eventually get to the pawn storm. Having done it this way, though, you could argue that the Black queen is. I don't know that the Black queen is any better on f6 than it would be on e7, right? The queen herself is slightly out, misplaced when White does get f4. Is there something to that? So I'm saying that maybe you were okay. Maybe you did it the right way. I'm defending you. Maybe your move order was better.
Yeah, to me, a lot of my moves look quite suspect now. I'll explain in a second. So he played a6, knight a3. Obviously, It makes no sense to come back to c3. He went g4. And here I kind of jumped the gun and went f4. Looking now, I kind of find myself asking, well, why didn't I play b4? That seems to be what I should play.
Don't ruin my dreams. In my head, this is the perfect game for White. In my head.
Yeah. It's possible that after b4, what I didn't like was queen g5, because it just offers the exchange. And
okay.
That could have been it. But anyway, I went f4, gf3. You have to take, obviously. Rook takes. And then he can't go to g5 because I'll take the pawn on f7. He goes back. And I go...
and then you played c3.
c3.
I guess now b4 maybe runs into something with D5? Yeah, D5? No, maybe not. Maybe.
I doubt d5 because I could even, for instance, if you make the move b4,
Yeah.
d5, ed5, knight b4.
I forgot the rook was also defending this, so it's actually more secure for white than I realized. But still, this seems very dangerous. I mean, the more the position opens up, the more I feel like the whole thing that people spent years saying, the reason that Jampowski's dubious, you part ways with the bishop pair too early. I don't feel like the opening of the position favors white unless you get something concrete.
Yes, no, here I'm helping him
Yeah.
put his pieces on good squares. So I think c3.
Yeah.
He went h5. And still, I double rooks. It looks strange to play on the king side, but I have to restrain him while doing my stuff on the queen side. And
Right.
I don't need the rooks yet. I need b5 before anything else.
Right.
So he went rook df8, I went b4.
It seems that this is according to plan, though, right? Because it's flexible by design. You weren't trying to get into an all-out race position of opening prep. This has become a position of opposite sides castles with winning chances, but it is unique, right? Because you're actually bringing more pressure to the king side in some ways than you are on the queen side. So I don't know. I still feel like this sounds like it was going according to plan in terms of what you thought headed in.
Yes. It's difficult for me to evaluate. I mean, I think you can play bishop h6 and then put a rook on g8, a pawn on h4. It's going to be awkward for me to defend that pawn on g2. I mean, I'll have to contort myself rather. It's easy to defend, but I'll have to contort my pieces a bit.
Right.
And
You have
if
b5,
I'm getting
right?
b5, but then, well, okay, my attack has started as well. So it's hard to tell how I would look at this position today.
Yeah.
I think, though, that I was simply happy that this was a messy enough position, not obviously worse for me, and
Yeah.
it's what I was looking for.
But it sounds like you still feel that probably this was what Karpov should have done, and that knight a7, you called it in your book an overly developed sense of danger. Of course, that was one of Karpov's greatest strengths. His muscles of prophylaxis were very strong. But at the same time, you could also was it a practical thing in the match? Because even if you could argue that what you're saying is true, maybe this is objectively what Black should have done. Go for the craziness. He doesn't want the craziness because he just wants to draw. So you think that was some of the psychological reasons he started to go into defense mode too?
Yes, he clearly wanted to draw very badly.
Right.
And he made the same mistake against Kasparov in game 24.
Yeah, in English.
There were many moments when just a little bit of simple intuition, which Karpov had in spades, would have been enough. But he tried to play so accurately and kept on getting into trouble. I think it was more the impression of that game rather than anything else. In this game, I played freely. I played quite quickly. I got up after every move, went round. I knew that slightest thing went wrong, the match was over. But I was kind of resigned to that, and I thought, I'm going to torture him just as a bonus, and that was it. So
You're like a free spirit, just playing with house money at that point. I love it.
yeah.
Knight a7. So now you begin the remaneuvering, the great remaneuvering of the pieces. Bishop h6, queen e1, king b8, and then bishop d3. Obviously, any thoughts you have, welcome. But bishop c6, knight f4.
Yes, so bishop c6 is awkward because I'm just a bit slow if I want to play c4 and d5.
Mm-hmm.
So if c4, you can go bishop f5, and if I go d5, you can play f takes e4.
So wait, which position?
That is clearly not very good for me.
So if bishop c6,
so here I
c4,
played
f5,
knight f4. If I go c4, f5, then d5, and then he goes f takes e4.
Right. Okay, makes sense. Got it.
So I went knight f4, which is the idea is to delay f5 because I will have knight g6.
Yeah.
And he went
Rook g8 now.
rook g8.
Decides he has to make some moves in the king side, whether he likes it or not. f7 is no longer under fire as well because the knight is on f4.
And in fact, I suspect he has improved his position because now if his bishop runs, it can go all the way to e8 and 1. And he can start playing on the g file and try to kick up some counterplay there. I went d5.
Mm-hmm.
He went bishop e8. Queen f2. And I'm not even sure that I'm really attacking anymore. I think I'm just trying to play good moves and not be worse. But there's enough life in the position, so that's nice enough. He went bishop g7. I could then use this little trick with knight d4 because e5 doesn't work. I have knight f5.
Yeah, if e5,
and this is looking decent enough. So bishop d7, I took d takes e6.
You can't take with
Bishop
the pawn with
d4.
knight to g6. Although in that position, maybe he had bishop d4 anyway, but he decides to take d4 first.
Well, yeah, if he plays f takes e6, I can go knight g6, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4.
Ah, okay, very nice. Yeah.
But hang on, he can go queen g5, but then I have
Ah,
rook g3. I think that's the point. I have rook g3.
okay.
So that's,
Classic.
yes.
Okay, so f takes e6 not on the agenda. Bishop takes d4 instead. That allows.
I don't really want to take with the queen because he will take with the bishop. He has to take with the bishop, but then
Yeah,
one move later he's going to play knight c6 and knight e5, and the knight is coming to that gorgeous square. In fact, he could have even played it instead of bishop takes e6. He could play knight c6.
Yeah.
Throwing that move.
E5
And that, so I don't think I spent any time on queen takes d4, that's for sure.
Okay.
C d4, f e6, e5, and e5. He went bishop c6. Right. I went knight g6, kind of resigned to that I had not gotten a lot and that he was probably going to escape. And then he did something. What? Yes, he did something. He went queen d8.
Queen d8 here, but the question is.
And I realized he had just forgotten something. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm asking. Yeah, he must have forgotten something. And again, for the viewers, bishop c6 kind of forced because e5 does threaten knight to g6, and you don't want to allow that. But he should have just taken on g6 and gone for a big exchange, right?
Yes, and then if he, I've got a little bit of hope. So rook g6, bishop g6. What he might have missed is the following: that instead of after rook g6, I can play rook f8 check. Rook takes f8, queen takes f8, knight c8 defends. No, hang on, knight c8 defends the queen. Because here I will just take on g6. He goes knight c8 defending the queen, and I believe that what Karpov missed was bishop takes g6, queen g5. Now I am losing.
That makes sense.
I'm not even convinced I saw this, which is probably why I went into it with such sang-froid. But
right. Okay, yeah. Well, and he has to find queen g5 or he can't go for the line. Otherwise, he's playing the endgame down the exchange.
Correct.
So, okay, that would make mutual blindness, I guess, a little bit. You both saw a ghost that rook f8 was winning for white, even though it wasn't.
Yeah.
So, mutual blindness for me usually works in the other way, like mutual blunders. But in this case, you guys both saw that it was better for white than it was. Bishop takes, but he didn't go for this. He played queen d8.
Queen d8 instead.
Very quickly.
And then I was very excited because now suddenly the result that I was hoping that I maybe would turn up and I would have half a chance, and suddenly, wait, I'm winning. And I was very excited. But I've spoiled so many games against him. I mean, I mentioned earlier that he's a very hard man to put away. That suddenly I thought, no, I'm going to take all the time. I'm going to do everything so slowly, but I'm not going to let him escape. So that was just my thought process at this point. So I went knight f7.
Again, it's a key move. Little.
And he found this cute move, queen h4.
Yeah.
Because if he takes on g2, I'll simply be a piece up. And if he takes with the bishop, one move earlier, I mean, if instead of rook takes g2, he takes with bishop g2, then knight d8, bishop goes back, and then just queen g3 works. So I'm fine. I mean, I'm winning.
So he finds.
So he found a clever trick, which is queen h4. Of course, queen takes h4 is a mistake. Rook g2 check, king h1, and rook f2 check is the draw. Because he never allows me to capture the bishop. So.
Very nice.
But queen f3. And suddenly, unexpectedly, I'm just winning. So that was very nice. He went d5. Rook d1, queen b4.
He gets a few pawns, but it's all for naught now.
Yes. The most important pawn after I win on take the one on h5 is going to be the one on e6. Once I take that, then it's not so much how many pass pawns you have, but how fast they're going to go off the board. And mine are going to go up very fast. So I improved my queen. And now that I have an a pawn and an e pawn, his pawns are not going to move. So it's just a question of timing some exchange or some tactic. I could finally play h3. Rook c8 doesn't look like the greatest winning attempt anyway, so probably he had given up himself. I go queen d6 check and it's game over.
Yeah.
Queen f6, sorry.
Queen f6. Knight d4.
He went knight d4.
E6 falls.
Knight d8. I'm wondering now why I didn't play knight d6.
And then check here. Yeah, that would have been a fancy.
Yes, and if he goes king b8, I take on. No, I don't want to do that. Hang on. Put the. I want to go king b8, rook takes c8.
Oh, and then just e takes d6.
Yes, and queen d1 check, king h2. I don't think there is anything happening. Knight f3, I would doubt it. I mean, even king g3 might win, and gf3, queen d2, king g3 is going to be winning because he doesn't have the g5 square.
Yeah.
So now that knight d6 might just have clinched it as well.
Well, you didn't want to let it slip, so you went for the safe route of just knight d8 and taking e6.
Yes.
No one
And he resigned.
begrudge you that. So you win this game, and then suddenly the match is heading to rapid tie breaks, right? So you were a free spirit, no pressure. You thought the match was over. Now the match is not over. What do you do to get yourself ready and back in kind of the, the right head of mind? I was just about to say that doesn't make any sense. The right headspace. Yeah.
It's well, the way it unfolded was a disaster, of course, and I found it easier to play when my situation seemed hopeless than now. And I thought, rapid chess, I should have a decent shot at him. And even though everything about the event was designed to give him advantages, we had reached the stage where they didn't matter anymore. We were both equally tired, emotionally at least. I had only to play well in rapid chess, and I was, at that point, by some distance, the best rapid player in the world. And I got a much better position with black in the first game, outplayed him easily, and then managed to lose it and fell apart for the second time, completely fell apart. There was a lot of stuff with this whole event where it felt very unfair. The Karpov and Kasparov would come in the final, well, in the semis originally, and then later on, when Kasparov withdrew or didn't accept, Karpov parachuted into the finals.
Right.
That was unfair. Having said that, I think that is besides the point. I have to accept that I simply didn't have the strength at the last stage, and I blew it. It doesn't get too much more favorable than this, and I did not take my chances. So that was a disappointment, and I had the sense that I was getting closer, I was improving. I went through the knockout tournament in Groningen with only one tiebreak. And a second one with Mickey Adams, of course, at the very end. And it was a very impressive performance. In Delhi, I did it with only one tiebreak, Halif won. And very dominating performances, just to win all these two-game matches in the main games and so on. But this was a huge blow.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I didn't want to blame myself because I felt it was so unfair to begin with, and having gotten this far, I shouldn't kick myself. But on the other hand, you have to objectively accept that there is something holding you back, and the question was how I should improve and get to the next stage. But that would come in 2 years.
I love that. I don't think there's a better teaser in the world than for everyone to stay buckled up, because as the chess fan in me wants to say, what did you learn, Vishy? What did you learn from that? Objectively looking at yourself in the mirror is it's not an easy thing to do, right? Especially when, like you said, there are excuses you could reasonably make, right? But I think that that's a really powerful statement, and obviously one that eventually paid off for you, and in terms of what you would become. So I think we're going to leave it at that for part 3. We'll take a break, of course, and for all of you who continue to enjoy this journey with us, make sure you leave a comment, share the video with your friends, because the best video series of all time is about to be done here. And we will see you for part 4 as soon as you click next video, I guess.